When Garland Cupp was growing up in Mangum, Oklahoma, he thought big apples went in pies, and the only computer he knew was the local math teacher.
I grew up in a small town. We didn't have anything. Our family was without any financial means, but I didn't know the difference at the time, so it didn't matter to me. You know, started working when I was 11 years old, worked all my life. I've done about every job that you can name. Drive-in theaters, projectionist, I've sold women's shoes, I've stacked grocery shelves, I've driven tractors, I've done just about everything. So, but we just had a good time. You know, we were in a small town. You don't worry about letting the kids out on the street, at least you didn't then, so we just kind of had the run of the whole town.
He graduated from Mangum High School in 1959. When he realized he couldn't afford to go to college, he decided to go to Amarillo to see his girlfriend.
One day, packed up everything I had, which fit in a 1952 Chevrolet Coupe, and I left for Amarillo. And got a job there working in a wholesale hardware company as a packer. And as I said, one day I saw them unloading this thing on the loading dock, and I thought it looked kind of weird, and I asked around, I said, "What's that?" And they said, "A computer." And I said, "What the hell's a computer?" Nobody knew, and so I just walked in the president's office one afternoon, unannounced, told him I understood he was installing a computer and I'd like to work on it. And he said, "Do you have any experience?" And I said, "Yeah, taking some college courses." So he said, "Okay." He said, "It'll take them a few weeks to install it, but you got a job." I've been wanting to try to move some boys from the warehouse into our front office anyway. So I befriended the IBM engineer that was installing the computer, and he gave me some manuals, and I taught myself how to program. I had never even heard of programming before that.
Nobody can stay in Amarillo forever, and who could have known that the simple act of going to a football game would change his life?
In 1963, my dad and I went to the famous annual OU Texas football game in Dallas, staying with a relative. And the Sunday morning after the game, I picked up a newspaper, and there was a big ad there from McDonnell Aircraft Company interviewing computer specialists. So just on a whim, I thought, I think I'll go talk to them. It was at a hotel not far from where we were staying. So I went in, interviewed with them, never expected to hear another thing from them, because they didn't know anything about computers either. They were engineers, just told, you know, while you're there, talk to some computer people. Went home, and a week or so later, I get a call saying, you know, we'd like for you to come to work for us. And they made me an offer, which sounded real great. And I said, well, I'll fly up and talk to you. So I went up and talked to them, saw this computer installation, and aerospace in those days was the largest users of computers in the world. And I was just absolutely in awe of their computer installation. And I said, gee, I got to have part of that.
He accepted the job, went home to give notice, pack, and tell his best friend Penny he was leaving town. Even though they were both engaged to other people, Penny had an idea.
She looked at me, she said, well, why don't you marry me and I'll go with you? And I said, is that a threat or a promise? He said, that's a promise. And I said, okay. So we wound up eloping that night, went and picked some friends of ours up at West Texas State, drove to Canyon, where there was no waiting period. It turned out you did have to have blood tests, so we wound up, all four of us, sleeping in the parking lot of the hospital all night that night. So when the help showed up the next morning, went in and got our blood test, went and got our marriage license, got married that day, and in the first week of November, we'll celebrate our 45th wedding anniversary, so I guess it worked out all right.
Penny and Garland went to St. Louis, where he did the programming for both the business and scientific sides of McDonnell Douglas. And ironically, it was Penny that helped Garland make the decision that would be a pivotal turn in his career.
And in all fairness, anything that I might have accomplished in my lifetime, I can sincerely say she gets at least half the credit, if not more. And she's been a very, very valuable sidekick in my whole career. I would have never gone to New York without her. I remember sitting at the breakfast table one morning when I was made the job offer. And the famous Lou Gertner, who he went on to become chairman of IBM, was the one that had made me the job offer formally. He was my contact with American Express. And he was going to call me later that morning, and I had to give him a decision. She said, what are you going to tell him? I said, I'm going to tell him no. So I like my job at McDonnell. I know where I'm going. I'm not paid as well, but that'll come. And she said, you know, if you turn that job opportunity down and go to New York, you'll be second guessing for the rest of your life. I think you ought to take it. So I did, and off we went.
Garland became a high-level executive with American Express and was asked by the National Academy of Sciences to advise former Secretary of State George Shultz on the impact of technology on the conduct of foreign affairs.
The National Academy of Sciences is a private organization, but its only customer is the federal government. And it's privately funded, and it basically does a lot of studies for the federal government. And this one was one simply of Secretary Shultz was concerned about his technology in the embassies around the world and the impact of new technology on his conduct of foreign affairs. So we spent a day, it was one day, with him, kind of talking that through, and the thing that astonished me, as I recall, was the low level of sophistication in our embassies at the time. I mean, they were still working with teletypes and so on when the rest of the world was using the internet, and it was just amazing to me. So we made some suggestions to him, and how many of those he took, I have no idea.
Garland retired from American Express at the age of 55, celebrating a full career where travel and fun were work as well as pleasure, and entertaining dignitaries and celebrities was part of the job. Garland, Penny, and his daughter Nikki moved back home to Oklahoma. He's the chairman of BMC Software, and he and Penny contribute to a number of charities: Salvation Army, Pepper's Ranch, MD Anderson and Cancer Charities, OSU, and Edmond Fine Arts Institute, to name a few. For his strong work ethic, his ability to blaze a trail in the computer world, his analytical mind, and his keen leadership ability, we are honored to award Garland Cupp the Chairman's Award.